Hello gamers, today I am replaying another game from my childhood. This one being a game based on one of the best animated movies of all time, Cars. Now for the footage of this game I played it on an emulator for the Xbox 360. I did run into some issues with this version I was using, mainly with parts of the map not loading, and a problem which is a problem that seemed to fix itself after a little bit. And then there was also this audio bug which would occasionally occur, which just bugged out the cutscenes, but that's okay because you can skip cutscenes. And the reason I did end up using an emulator is that I did buy this game on Steam, but I just couldn't get it to work in the slightest, to the point where the emulator actually ran better than the actual PC version. I think that's because the PC version is obviously made way back in 2006 for like Vista machines, and I have like the newest version of Windows and just non-compatible, but that's okay. But however, the Xbox 360 version was not the version I played as a kid. I also didn't play the PlayStation or PC version, as the Cars video game was one of the only 2 games I ever owned for the Nintendo Wii, the other obviously being Wii Sports. But during research for this video, I found out that the Wii port for this game was made by the same people who made the third Cars game. Well, not the Cars game based off the third movie, but the third game based off the first movie. It's not confusing at all, but was 100% confusing, as I didn't have much memories from this game. Like, I knew I played a Cars game on the Wii and I knew I played it a lot, but for some reason the only mission I could remember of playing as a child is a mission where you have to go and collect some postcards for Lizzie, which that's like the second mission in the game, which most likely means as a child I was really bad at video games, as I could not get very far, which means I probably spent most of my time driving around Radiator Springs. On the topic of Radiator Springs, this game has an amazing looking map, with it having the town looking almost identical to the movies, and even 2 little extra areas you can explore outside of Radiator Springs. And counting when this game came out, it was 2006, I would say they did an incredible job with this map. There's also a section of the game which takes part during the night, and oh my god, Radiator Springs looks amazing at night with all the old-timey neon signs glowing. And it also helps because most of the town is less run down than in the movie, as this game's story takes place just after the first movie. So there's a little bit more money in the town due to Lightning McQueen, as it is also Lightning McQueen's second season taking part in the Piston Cup, and now working out of Radiator Springs as his sort of hometown of sorts. The story follows McQueen in his journey to win the Piston Cup from Chick Hicks. And at the end of each chapter throughout the game, you get to go and take part in an official Piston Cup race, which takes part on a bunch of different oval tracks around America. And between the big races, against all the other Piston Cup cars, you are mainly going around Radiator Springs and the surrounding areas racing people or collecting things for them, which I very much did enjoy racing around the town. However, one thing I do have to add is that the difficulty of this game was, well, incredibly easy. Now, which is understandable, as this game was made in 2006 for people who were probably around 6. But like, there was no harder difficulty. I had it on the hardest difficulty and you're still winning every race by like 30 to 15 seconds within that time range. However, I have later found out that there's actually this sort of cheat code you can do which makes the game a little bit harder, which is just changing the name of your profile to Champion, which, if I ever do replay this game, which I probably will because I did still enjoy my time, I will probably check out the more advanced game mode and see if it is indeed the sort of difficulty I'm looking for today. I still expect it to be a little bit easy because like I'm now a fully grown adult and maybe the Champion difficulty was more for teenagers. But I guess there's only one way to find out, and that's for me to eventually play through the game. However, one thing I feel that this game could have massively improved on That would be the drift controls, the power slide button as it was, which whenever you do a power slide, it barely kicks out the rear of the car, which as a racing fan, I know drifting isn't necessarily the fastest way around a track, which is maybe why the rear doesn't go out. But this game could have taught a bunch of kids A, what oversteer is, and B, how to control oversteer. Not that maybe actually you don't want kids knowing how to drift around the streets. But then at the same time, the Cars movie is pretty famous for the turn left to go right on dirt, which is something you don't really have to do at all in the game. It'll actually just have you go swerving off the track and not work how it should work. So a bit of a missed opportunity if you ask me. But apart from that one thing, this game was pretty good. The whole cast of the movie reprised their roles, with only some of the actors phoning in the performance, which for quote-unquote real actors in 2006 being a part of a video game is pretty good. And it also ends up being about 5 hours in playtime, which I feel is the perfect length for a video game that is a tie-in of the movie, as it's long enough that you get to enjoy the game and sort of learn the controls and become proficient in the game. However, it's not so long that it overstays its welcome, which this game never got to that point. However, there are some segments of the game where you don't play as Mr. Lightning McQueen himself. And some of these are good and others are less so. The first one you are going to encounter is tractor tipping. Everyone knows what tractor tipping is. However, in the game, you play as everyone's favorite tow truck, Mater, and unfortunately, it's probably my least favorite of all the other character quests you play as. Mainly for the reason of it completely changes the controls for the game, and it only does it for this segment and no other, which naturally for me makes it feel just a little bit out of place. And there is one more mission where you get to play as Mater, where you race against his cousins in a demolition derby. Well, a demolition derby-esque race. However, the controls remain the original ones. I thought that at first this could have even been an interesting concept if all the separate cars you play as have different controls, sort of mapping different cars would control differently. And this would just be a bit more of an extreme way to show that. But at the same time, I do feel how in a children's game, you probably don't want to just throw a bunch of different controls on the player halfway through when they've probably just learned the controls for Lightning McQueen. But I thought that was an interesting idea in my head, but they did not go with that, which is fine. There's a reason I am not a game developer. However, next up, there are 2 more mini games. One when you play as Ferrari's biggest fan, Luigi, where he races around Radiator Springs to collect tyres before the time runs out. This one I quite enjoyed, as it was something a little different from racing around as Lightning. And then there is one called Sheriff's Pursuit, and this activity is sort of like what you would expect it from its name. It's where you play as Sheriff, the cop car, and pursue criminals. Also, I forgot to mention before, but this, just like Luigi's one and Mater's one, has levels for you to take part in. But Sheriff's Pursuit just so happens to be one of my favourite missions to play, apart from the big speedway races. And that is just because it is the most different activity. Now, it doesn't completely change the controls like tractor tipping. However, it has you playing as Sheriff chasing down street racers. And once you catch up with them, you then have to stay within a certain amount of distance for a certain amount of time. And if you do not do this, the distance meter resets and then you need to do it all over again. And obviously there's a time limit to do these as well. I think I enjoyed this one the most, as it's the one I found the most challenging in terms of missions. So the big speedway oval races you take part in at the end of every chapter are they're not unique because it's just another race and to race around the oval. So it's technically the easiest race you will take part in. However, it's by far the longest race, clocking in at 12 laps, when most races around Radiator Springs are more in that 3-lap range, 3 to 5. And also at the bottom of the screen during the speedway races, you have a tyre meter where it shows you the life of McQueen's tyres. And once your tyres get low on life, you then have to go in for a pit stop where the mechanic, whose name I've completely forgotten, Why do I think it's Greedo? It's not Greedo. Anyways, the name's not important. The forklift from Cars, obviously. And then you play as Mr. Forklift Man, whose name I should have really looked up while writing the script, but I didn't because I'm silly. But you play as him, and then there's a mini game to change Lightning McQueen's tires and fuel him up and wipe his windshield, which was pretty good, pretty fun. However, you only change two lots of tires, and the tires you change would probably be the wrong ones if you were to only change 2 tires, as you change the right set of tires. But since you're constantly turning left, the left set would actually have more wear on it. So you'd actually think you'd change the left more than the right if you didn't change all 4 of them at a time, which is what you should do. But you know what? I don't think this game keeps up to date with the works of tire wear mechanics in the real life NASCAR. Or maybe it does, and maybe I just don't watch enough NASCAR these days. But anyways, the last thing I want to touch on about the Cars game is how good its characters are. Now, clearly you have all the cars from Cars the movie, but there are also some added cars to the game who don't seem out of place even in the slightest, even to the point where I feel that some of them are even better in the game than the incumbent cast from the movie. And honestly, if you had me play this game and watch the movie, I would be shocked that some of the cars from the game wouldn't show up in the movie. That's how good they were. I'm especially thinking of the British classic race cars that you meet outside Flo's Cafe. But that has been my journey through Cars the game. One of the better movie tie-in games I have played. Maybe up there with Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. And by far the best Disney game I have played to date. Of course, not including the greatest game of all time, G-Force. I love those goddamn hamsters, man. But after finding out that the third game in this series was made by the people who made the port version that I am more familiar with playing, I very much feel that in the future I might check out the game which was titled Cars Race-O-Rama, which is an interesting name. But hey, that may even be my next video, or maybe my next video will be on Sleeping Dog, a classic GTA clone, or maybe it'll be on a game I haven't even thought of yet. Who knows, because I don't.